Hey everyone, welcome to Assume Control, a channel where I am learning D&D and kind of recording my experiences with it. So I think in my hunter character creation video, I think this is the first video on my channel, I went over the character that I wanted to play, how I built it, kind of my thoughts on it. Um, and I think I mentioned in that video that we did a session 0 combat where we, the players, there's 5 of us, had the option between an easy encounter and a harder encounter, and we figured we'd go with the harder encounter to kind of stress test our lack of healer composition. I don't know if I fully mentioned it, but we have myself, a ranger, and then subclasses hunter, playing a dual wield melee dex-based build. We have a Battlemaster fighter using a two-hander and obviously going strength with that. We have a similar kind of play style to me, Arcane Trickster Rogue, going dual wield the daggers or something like that, maybe short sword dagger, but melee dex based rogue. And then we also have a ranged dex based rogue who is assassin, I think, subclass. And the final character is a Celestial Warlock, just to kind of put it out there. Now, we didn't really plan very well. I think most of us, maybe barring one person, has played before. And this is kind of what we ended up with. Everyone kind of made their character that they were interested in. And, we trust the DM to kind of, in some ways, play around us, I guess. We'll make sure to stock up as much as we can on potions. I do have some spell capability to heal. So does the Celestial Warlock. But as far as the fighters, the fighter can kind of self-heal a little bit. And then I don't know what the rogues are going to do. They just got to stay alive. But with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about that session 0, some of the things that I learned, as it was not the first time I played D&D. I did a one-shot prior to this to see if I was interested. So technically not the first time, but it's the first campaign sort of setting, combat environment that I was in. And some of the things that I kind of realized I messed up on, and some things that I have questions or thoughts about. There was, just to really quickly get it out of the way, a reward. We did succeed. It's kind of starting from the top here. I don't know like the stat blocks or anything as far as what we fought. I've never DM'd, so I've never really looked at that sort of stuff, and I'm going to try and keep myself ignorant of those things. I'm sure there's a lot of stat blocks, so even if I looked, I probably wouldn't remember everything unless I DM'd in the future. Then I would have to actually learn. But we faced gargoyles. I think we faced 4. It was either 4 or 5. I think it was 4 of them. 4 gargoyles. And then there was like a 3-headed sort of beast thing that the middle head could do a frontal cone breath magic attack, and the 2 side heads could do a bite and claw multi attack deal. And then I think all the gargoyles could do multi attacks as well. I think 2 attacks. So that's what we faced. I think it's either again 4 or 5 gargoyles plus that 3-headed monster. And we did succeed. Nobody went down. I think it took about 4 rounds of combat, with like the last round, 5th round, being like one of the gargoyles tried to fly away and escape. And then our range damage dealers kind of finished it off as it flew out of the top of the building we were in. But for me, I did almost die, and we'll kind of jump into my little list here. Hopefully y'all can see this kind of okay. I'll zoom in. It's pretty simple list here. Right off the bat, I was caught in the frontal cone one time. It was like a recharge mechanic, so like it did it, and then I had a chance to recharge that attack. Big learning lesson number 1 there. That saved us quite heavily. Or the fact that he did not recharge at all during the fight. Every roll that was done to see if it recharged failed. So it only got 1 breath attack off in the 4 rounds that it was alive. That was huge, because the 1 attack that it did do nearly destroyed me in the fighter in that first round. And jumping into the first one, I totally blanked on the fact that I have absorb elements on my spell list. I took it with the intent to keep myself up in these situations, and typical beginner thing. It's on your brain. You're focused on other things, um, and I'd like to mentally kind of get into the battle, imagining it in my mind, and so I kind of got distracted there. And I did save against the damage, but it still hit for, I think, 14 or 15 damage or something around there, which was obviously a sizable amount. And as I melee, I was also attacked by the gargoyle in front of me, and I think a secondary gargoyle as well. And so I think in the first round of combat before I reached our Celestial Warlock, who I think was last or pretty much close to last in the initiative order, um, had to like heal and do stuff like that. So that was pretty close. So yeah, first thing here is remember I have the spell. It could have saved me a lot of health. That was awful. Second thing here, forgetting slash not correcting the fact that I have 2-weapon fighting and that I should have been adding my ability modifier to my offhand attacks, which is in this case +3. The rogue in our party, I think I mentioned the Arcane Trickster is also going a dual wield dex-based thing. But what I didn't realize is that rogues didn't have this. And from his perspective, obviously he's new. He knew that he couldn't add it. And so that's what he told me to do. And I totally forgot that I have this as a ranger. And so I think for like half the attacks that I did, I wasn't adding it, and then realized later that I could, and then started adding it. So I think I missed out on, I mean, it's not a ton of damage. It's only my offhand. And so, maybe 9 to 12 damage or something, which is still a lot. Definitely could have helped. Maybe, I know there was one gargoyle, the very first one that I attacked. If I had that damage on it, it would have been dead before its turn came around for one round. So that could have saved me some health there. So that was the second huge mistake. The third one here, maybe this is more of a thoughts or an opinion type of thing, but I do have a dagger just in my inventory. I don't have like weapon mastery with it or anything like that. But maybe I should look into buying a bow and some arrows. Not sure. Oops. Just get rid of this on the screen. And it's not necessarily what I maybe should focus on because we have a ranged rogue and a celestial warlock who can make ranged attacks. But depending on the initiative order and the situation, maybe it would behoove me to have a short bow at least to have a little bit more range capacity. So maybe something I look to pick up whenever we get the chance to shop. Let me know if there's any, maybe like, I don't know how D&D works, but like maybe there's some bows that are better for somebody who isn't specializing in bows. It has like a better floor, maybe not as great as ceiling, but if it has a good floor, then that means I don't have to invest in so many like the weapon masteries or anything like that, and it can still perform okay. Otherwise, maybe I'll pick up a short bow and some arrows. I don't know if I have to have a quiver. I saw that you can buy a quiver. Again, these are like the weird rules that I don't totally understand. I'm assuming you need both, and you just have the quiver on your back. So I'll have to figure that out. I also don't know how it would work stowing my 2 weapons and then pulling them out. Pulling the bow out and then wanting to pull the weapons back out again at the end of the turn. Weird stuff like that. Don't totally know. But having a ranged option would be nice. Again, you don't know how initiative is going to be ordered in the scenario that you're in. I might be the one that needs to finish something off or do something at range. So I'll look into that as well. The last one here in terms of misplays or mistakes, not positioning my familiar or really not really thinking about my familiar at all, other than the sort of like strategy of having it give you advantage. I remember reading that somewhere. And so like I would just have it give me advantage and then it would just kind of stand next to me. I wasn't like positioning it in a location where it would be harder to kill it in the future if our DM decides to attack our familiars. Myself and one of the rogues have the familiar advantage thing going on. In this particular session 0, the DM did not kill familiars, and so we were able to continuously give ourselves advantage on the first attack. But in the future, I'd imagine probably going to take an attack or two. So I need to get better at having it fly in, give me the advantage. I do my attack and then have it fly out, and maybe like hide behind something or just be in an annoying spot. I don't have Sentinel or anything like that to stop people from moving if they happen to walk by me. So that could be a little dangerous, but you know, I got to do what I can here with positioning on the familiar. I want to move into some thoughts. Maybe some other ones come up here as we go along. The first one is this idea of like the gameplay loop of the hunter ranger that I'm playing. I I created a clone of the character and kind of like leveled it up to like 7 or 8 to kind of give me an idea of what I should be planning towards. I think I mentioned in the first video for this character that um, I was planning on going War Domain Cleric. Now, that was something I thought about after this session 0. This was much after. And this idea of the gameplay loop was what led me to even look at multi-class options, on top of wanting to support the team more as much as I can. But if I were to go pure ranger, for example, for those next until like level 7 or 8, my gameplay doesn't necessarily change with me being a melee dex-based ranger here. I cast Hunter's Mark, and then I run in and I hit stuff. And that seems to be kind of how the whole thing works. I think if I were to be a pure ranger, I would, instead of, I don't remember what feat I went. I think I was going to go at level 4 here for ranger for the cleric version of the build. I think I'm planning on going like Mage Slayer potentially, just to have, since I can move a lot with like Long Strider and just my natural movement, hoping to get in on any casters. But if I were to go a pure ranger version of this in that cloned version that I made, I figured that going dual wielder as a feat would be pretty cool. Just so I have something to do with the bonus action and get an extra attack, especially to kind of help mitigate some of the spell slot usage. Because as a pure ranger, you're obviously, your development of your spells is a lot slower as a half caster. So, but that gameplay loop is pretty much done almost right off the bat. You end up doing the same thing as you level up. You're not doing a whole bunch of different stuff as a pure ranger. You kind of get better at what you do, right? You get the increased movement, you get climb speed. I think I saw you get the multi-attack defense as a hunter, so you can kind of just stay in the fray longer. But, the spells that you get are cool. There are some cool spells as you level up. I think I don't remember, nothing comes to my mind, but just the thought at the time when I was looking. But obviously you're limited in what you can cast and how often you can cast. Just as a half caster again. So that was kind of what led me to even look at multi-classing options. If I wanted to stick with this more pure, I think they call it martial gameplay, should I flex into fighter as well anyways and just be like a non-magical type of person? I don't know if at that point maybe I should just be a fighter also. So that's what led me down the cleric route. So interesting to see gameplay stagnate like that. I don't know if it's just a feature of the ranger, where because it's a half caster, some other things kind of get sacrificed in terms of the gameplay being offered, but something interesting there. And then the second thing was how to weave in spells. If I'm not using a spell that is a bonus action, it feels kind of bad since I'm a dual. I don't have the dual wielder feat in this case, but I still get the 2 attacks, right, from my main hand, and then with the Nick weapon property offhand, I lose out on 2 attacks, which means I'm losing out on 2 Hunter's Mark hits. And so losing all of that to cast a spell can feel kind of bad. And so I need to really think about what situations make the most sense to do that in. I don't have very many spells right now. Just the absorb elements as a reaction, Zephyr Strike, which is a bonus action, um, and so it's not that big of a deal right now. But as my spell list expands, something I need to think about and really balance, because right now I'm kind of all in on Hunter's Mark, and that can feel bad when I'm not doing my weapon attacks, right? So those were like the main takeaways from that session 0. We did get one free uncommon item as a reward of our choosing. And in my case, I went with the Serpent Scale armor. I was sort of poking around and, kind of thinking as a DPS brained person, I was like, oh, I should get a weapon. I think, especially, once we get to level 4 here, I'll have the +4 to dexterity with whatever feat I choose. I'm realizing that this comes from Candlekeep Mysteries. I'm assuming that that's allowed. I actually don't know. Hopefully it is. I'll have to double check with my DM. But this isn't like a crazy item. But anyways, this lets me give my full dexterity modifier to my AC. So I get the 14 armor class here, baseline, from this scale mail, and then I would have +4, so I would be at 18 AC instead of 17, with the room to continue to buff this up one more AC once I max out my dexterity, which I think I would do whenever, in the future we reach level 8. I think that's probably the best option right now, just to make myself a little bit more tanky, and to allow it to scale in the future. I won't have to worry about armor for a little while. I did take Arcana proficiency, and I have the Smith's tools here. So my hope is that I can craft an uncommon. My thoughts was making a scimitar. Since that's my offhand, I'm not going to be using it as often. I don't care about its damage as much. So if I can make an offhand scimitar of warning, I think that would be really cool, because I think that item gives advantage on initiative, and we can't. I think I can't be surprised, or everybody can't be surprised. I don't really remember. I think that's a good offhand to have for everybody, especially with 2 rogues, and with our lack of not necessarily a dedicated healer, because again, D&D is a little different than MMOs, but maybe having a little bit less support than you would expect in a group. Having that initiative advantage is I think going to be very, very important. So we'll see if I can craft that up. This is a monthly campaign, so I'm hoping that there's enough downtime in between where I can kind of craft that uninterrupted. I don't know how money is going to work. That is something else I need to clarify with the DM. I'm hoping we get enough money in between these to maybe I craft that item, and then also I can make a couple of scrolls. My intent there is to make Find Familiar scrolls with my Magic Initiate Wizard, so it's prepared, and I can scribe since I have the Arcana proficiency. I do need to purchase, I think, the Calligrapher's tools. I have 20 gold. I don't know how much it costs, but I'll look at that. If I have all of that, my hope is that I can, start crafting a couple of those scrolls, and then in the future, I'll be able to swap out Find Familiar for the Shield spell, which will give me yet another defensive option on rounds where I feel like I need that extra boost until the start of my next turn. So I think that would be pretty big. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Let me know what other items I should be looking out for. I haven't really considered a whole bunch. I think there was an item I was poking around, and it's so hard to know where the source is for these things because I forget to look. Even just now with the serpent scale, I saw that it came from not the player's handbook or anything. But there was an item, some butchers, something. It expands your crit range to 19 and 20. I think with how many attacks I'm going to be getting at level 5, I'll have 2 main hand attacks and then an offhand attack. I think that's pretty huge if I can expand that crit range, especially with the advantage chain that I'm kind of going for here. I'll have a lot of opportunities to crit. And because I have Hunter's Mark, obviously my weapon damage, and I have Colossus Slayer, which is also a die roll, I think all of those get doubled on a crit. Let me know if that's correct here with Colossus Slayer and Hunter's Mark. That would be really awesome. That'd be really cool. That'd be really, really interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my review of that session 0 that I had. A couple days until our first session. Hopefully, we all live. I'll do my best to make sure people live. Trying my best to position correctly, make it hard for enemies to get through to our squishy characters, um, and try my best to alleviate the warlock from having to constantly cast healing spells for their action rather than getting to actually do some damage. But you know what? Warlocks have that blast move, right? Who cares? But yeah, let me know your thoughts on what I learned from that first one. Any tips as a hunter? Let me know if you also feel the same way about that gameplay loop thing. Any items I should be looking forward to either crafting or purchasing. And yeah, thank y'all for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, take care.